Morning. So this morning, you guys probably have noticed in some of my staff devos, there's been a little bit of a theme kind of running through a lot of them. And that's mostly because over the past several years, I've been meditating on a very specific area, which is how we grow, both for myself, but also I've been writing on it. So this morning, what I want to go through with you is the parable of the sower. And I've got a little animation to help you guys get down this little piece. So most of us have heard of the parable of the sower. And most of us think of it in terms of the four types of ground. We're going to go out of Matthew and Luke. So we mostly think of the four types of ground: the hardened, shallow, weeded, and fruitful ground. But as I was studying on this, some of you guys may remember one of the last devos I did that talked about the elements of growth, like light, water, etc. But as I was meditating on this, the Lord highlighted to me a specific part of the parable where he said, if you do not understand this parable, how will you understand all the parables? So I decided to really dig deep into this parable and realize there's actually 3 layers that is in this parable beyond just there's 4 types of people. So the 4 types, though, is the starting point, which is there's 4 types of ground. But the important thing to note about this is the stages the heart can be in. This is not 4 types of people. Now, people can have these types in their heart, but you could have also different areas that are in these stages. You could have part of your life that's hardened and unreceptive to God. You could have a part that's fruitful and a part that's weeded. I'm weeded over here in my finances, but I'm fruitful over here and flowing in my gifts. So it is the first layer. These 4 types is showing us how we can have areas of our life that are receptive or not. So what the first layer of this is it gives us a scale of humility, the degree to which we allow God's word to penetrate or not. So then if we take that as a scale, let's say we put it on an axis. 0 meaning I haven't perceived it at all whatsoever, to 100 like 30, 60, 100 fold, 0 to 100. So, but then the question would be, what would you measure as the degree between each point? Because there has to be a degree of measurement between those things if you're putting it on a scale or on an axis. Right in the middle of the parable, Jesus tells us, he says, this people's heart has grown dull, when their ears they can barely hear and their eyes have closed, lest they should see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them. You've got 5 things that go between each of the layers, that go between from 0 to hardened. If you don't even see it, you can't even reject it. To go from getting even a sprout, you've got to hear it. To go from sprouted to getting a little bit of growth, you have to have some understanding. To go from growth to fruitfulness, you have to turn and change your ways. And to go from degrees of fruitfulness, you have to actually allow the word to change you and heal you. So we like to call these action potentials, because in the brain, when you're doing things, when you're activating things, activating thoughts, what happens is it's not just a static like climb to understanding the truth. In the brain, what you have is an accumulation of sodium ions and energy, and then all of a sudden, bam, all of a sudden, there's an activated potential where things fire. So you can actually see all of a sudden, bam, it moves through. You have an action potential that is achieved by steady accumulation of energy. So going back to our action potentials, if it's a steady accumulation to go from 0 to hardened, hardened to shallow, then there has to be some kind of choice or something that moves us through each action potential. So we're going to pull this out of James, and then Luke's account gives us the other pieces as well. So the first part is in James, is receive with humility the implanted word. And then Luke's account of the parable, he says, the seed on good soil stands for those with a good, noble and good heart who hear the word And then he's talking retroactively of the fruitful people. They've retained it by persevering, produced a crop. So now we have the motions that we need to get through all four action potentials. Now, what does this look like? If you're going to go from seeing to hearing, you have to submit yourself. You have to apply yourself to not just observe and perceive, but actually take it in, and that takes submission. If you're going to go from hearing to understanding, you have to keep it. You have to hold it in. You have to let it sprout, just like action potential. We've gone to the shall root. It's not stable yet, but it's there. It's sprouted. And then persevering is keeping it, tending it. We're going to have to apply some work to it. We're going to have to develop it. We're going to have to give it time. And that takes turning your ways. And then production, when you have fruit, once you have fruit, it's got to go somewhere. It's got to be exported. And the way fruit comes out of us is by confession, whether it's confessing the word or confessing to each other to be healed of things that we have in our life. So what I want you to get from this is that the parable of the sower is not just there's four types of people. He said, if you don't understand this parable, you won't understand all the parables. This is a roadmap that shows us how we get through things. And the way we can apply it is like, well, let's see, I've got an area in my life. Even as I was writing some of these things, I was like, man, I'm kind of weeded in this one area. I'm not really doing too well in this area. And it's like, well, it's right there. If I want to go from weeded to fruitful, there's some things I need to turn. I need to change. And the way I get to turning is I need to tend and confess. So I have a distinct outline of what it is I need to do to get through each area of growth.